Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. The proposed Trump-Putin summit in Budapest now appears unlikely, with the White House stating there are no immediate plans for a meeting on Ukraine. Meanwhile, European nations, in coordination with Ukraine, are working on a 12-point peace plan aimed at ending the conflict, with implementation to be overseen by a so-called Peace Council led by President Donald Trump. And to help us understand these developments, we're joined now by István Hegedűs, chairman of the Hungarian Europe Society. Welcome back to TVP World. Good to have you.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation.
István, let's begin with the collapse of this summit. Is this now, in your mind, is this a breakdown of Moscow-Washington diplomacy? Is this a strategic pause? How do we see this? What's your view?
Well, I have ambitious feelings because, of course, the idea to make a summit in Budapest, which supports more or less Putin and Orban, Prime Minister Orban is a good friend to Trump, was already problematic. On the other hand, of course, I think most of us hope that there will be a sort of peace, at least a ceasefire sooner or later. So that's why European leaders also supported the idea to hold a summit. However, without Zelensky, it would have been really a sort of problem, and maybe to give up all the aspects what Ukraine, of course, with real reasons, would have presented. So again, it's a problem that no talks are not going on. However, we need another format, including the European Union and Ukraine itself.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm also curious because, at the same time, it's very much that Trump wants this done. He wants some kind of tangible victory here. He's probably been also emboldened by what he did in Gaza. He had that piece of paper in his hand. He likes the ceremony. But I'm just looking also for encouraging signs here. Does this postponement maybe mean that it isn't just about a photo op, that this actually is more about really finding something of progress? Can we see some kind of silver lining in all this?
I don't see at the moment any real hope for a fast progress. Maybe I am wrong, but at the moment it seems to be that President Putin wants to go on with the war. And of course, Ukraine would not give up so easily territories and wants to keep its sovereignty and integrity as much as it's possible. So the war still goes on, and Trump, although he might have some good intentions, but on the other hand, he changes his position day by day. As many observers argue, it depends whom he was talking the day before. And this is not diplomacy. This is not politics. This is just, one man's show who wants to have a Nobel Prize for his peace efforts. And this is not the real issue. The real issue is how to make a peace between these two countries. One of them is an aggressor, and the other one is a victim. And of course, there is another point, that is the Hungarian position, that Orban really very much wanted to have a summit, what he called a peace summit, and he hoped that that would help him. And both Putin and Trump are supporting Orban at the domestic level, and we will have elections next year. So it's also a problem for Orban that there won't be any negotiations in Budapest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask about that as well, because that relationship, as you've just noted, is a close one. He likes to have both of these strong men seen as allies and friends. And what about that relationship now between Donald Trump and Viktor Orban? This is someone who's had his back. Trump has also said publicly that this is a tough guy, a friend of his. How does this relationship now develop, and what kind of influence, if any, does really Orban have in getting Trump on the table? And what is Orban after? He can't have both, can he?
Well, I wouldn't overestimate Orban's role. Actually, he hasn't met Donald Trump since his inauguration in a bilateral meeting, whilst all European leaders have been there in the White House. So maybe they talk sometimes, but Hungary is still a middle-sized, relatively small country. And of course, Orban supports Trump and praises, admires him a lot, but it doesn't mean that he can help. And it's the same with Putin. Orban has to be very careful since Hungary is still within the European Union. So his room of maneuver is relatively small. He goes on at domestic level with a strong propaganda against Ukraine and Zelensky himself. But I think his real influence is very small. Trump prefers to talk to the real leaders of the European Union, and the coalition of the willing, those nations and member states which are ready to support Ukraine, their voice is much stronger than Orban's, who makes court to Trump again and again. It seems to matter much less than those of the EU real leaders.
Okay. Speaking of EU leaders, we have the European Council, so gathering of all the European leaders of the European Union 27. That starts on Thursday, but apparently Viktor Orban will be late. He will not be at some of those critical meetings. Apparently the vote will be going to Fico, one of his political allies in Slovakia. So what kind of, let's say, message does that send, if anything? I mean, we know that Orban is not a fan of Brussels or the European Union. How does this impact Hungary and Viktor Orban of his absence there?
His absence is very critical for him because even Robert Fico, the Slovak Prime Minister, supports Ukraine's accession to the EU, what Orban disagrees with. So he's totally alone with his very fundamentalist political line against Ukraine. But on the other hand, there is a reason why Orban remains in Budapest, because we will have our National Day on the 23rd of October, which is the day of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. And we will have elections next year. So Orban has to show strength here in Hungary, in Budapest, where he wants to make a speech, and his supporters are mobilized all over in the countryside. They get free ride to Budapest by buses and trains. Whilst on the other hand, his challenger, Péter Magyar, also organizes a huge rally. He doesn't have so much money, but of course it's a clash between numbers, how many people would come. And now it seems to me that for Orban, this time, this fight, the domestic fight before the elections, was even more important than to fight at European level, where he's totally alone.
And I just want to press this issue just one quick time as well. I mean, with Orban not present, I know he said there's domestic pressures on him to be in Budapest, but at the same time, I mean, not voting again at European Council. I mean, Orban himself has said so many times that, he's part of this whole apparatus. He's a member. He has some kind of vote, but him again, he's not there. He's not voting. I mean, what does that say also, let's say, on the workings of the European Union? I mean, Fico is apparently voting for him, but nevertheless, it's strange optics, isn't it?
It is. But I think that other pro-Ukrainian European leaders, the huge majority in the European Council, might use this opportunity. We had already moments when Orban went out for a coffee and not taking part in decisions in voting. So this time you don't have to convince Orban how to behave. But without him, this might be easier and in a very critical moment for the future of Ukraine. So, yes, European leaders and others like Keir Starmer from Britain and Australia, Canada, might use the moment that Orban is not present at the European Council meeting. So it's actually a good sign and a good moment for making decisions and not giving up support to Ukraine.
And also, let's stay with European issues for a moment. Energy, that's also a big one. It also matters very much, especially for Hungary, who's been pushing against this idea of phasing out Russian gas. How do you see this road? I mean, with him not there, Hungary not really represented. Just briefly, how is that going to impact energy policy for Hungary?
Actually, in a secret way, but it was already published, the Hungarian government signed some new agreements, let's say, with a French company about gas. And so the pressure was so big, so huge on Orban that he had to start to change the energy mix. So sooner or later, and of course it depends on the outcome of the elections, but Hungary will have to change his energy policy, and Hungary should diversify its supplies coming from the south, for example. So yes, Orban usually voted in favor of the sanctions. So this might be the case that even without or with Orban, sanctions would happen.
Right. Okay. So a lot of issues at play here. Look, we'll be covering it as always. We'll close it there. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. István Hegedűs there. Appreciate your time. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but there's much more coming up right here on TVP World, so don't go away.